Deborah, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here as one of my students and also as an incredible money coach. You are speaking to a very unique segment in the world of personal finance, the segment of people that I feel like gets forgotten. We're talking about Gen X. For some reason, people have forgotten that there's a whole ass generation of folks that are after boomers, but before millennials. And these folks are in their late 40s, early 50s, and they're navigating a different space in their lives financially, right? They might have kids that are growing up, going to college. They might be becoming empty nesters. And there's just like really unique conversations that need to be happening around money. And I don't think you can get more personal unless you're part of this group. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about your own personal finance journey and maybe some insights that you have as a Gen X personal finance expert. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Janice. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Absolutely. It's my honor. And let's just dive right in because you have an incredible story. You've navigated your finances in places that I think a lot of people can resonate with, but are kind of ashamed to talk about. And you've been like hella public about the fact that you've navigated not one, but two bankruptcies. You even talked about this in the New York Times. So give us kind of the overview of like what brought you into the personal finance space.
So when I was 1 month away from turning 50, I was like, I had less than $10,000 saved for retirement. I was facing foreclosure. Foreclosure was going to happen like a few days before my birthday on Valentine's Day. And I just was looking at my retirement account and I was like, you know what? I'm going to open a Roth. I'm going to see if I can do it on my phone. So I did that. I set up a transfer of $100 a few days later and I was scared to do it. But I was like, you know what? I got to do it. So a few days later, when I saw the $100 hit the account, it was like this high. And I was like, ooh, this feels good. I'm going to fucking do this again. So I started setting up recurring transfers. I mean, here I am facing bankruptcy, doing all these things. And that kind of made me feel less shame about the two previous bankruptcies that I had filed. So I filed in 2017 to prevent foreclosure on my home. The case was dismissed, as was the one in 2019, both for the same reason, that they thought I didn't have enough money to make the payments on time for 5 years. And my only option then was to either allow my house to go into foreclosure or to sell. And I didn't want to sell. And I put it off for as long as possible. I probably put it off for too long, but I ended up putting it up for sale just weeks after opening that Roth. And that kind of propelled me into the place I am now. We moved. And I saved a bunch of money from the house sale. I was really embarrassed to be renting because I was like, how am I going to be renting? How is it that I'm 50 years old and I'm renting? And little by little, I started realizing that I wasn't just renting. I was actually providing a home for my family. And just because the bankruptcy cases were dismissed didn't mean that I also didn't feel shame for having filed in the first place because it was tied to the possible loss of my home. And then I started to just kind of post on Instagram to like, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And then I came across a podcast that I started to listen to while I was door dashing because I wanted to bring in some extra money and not touch the money from the house sale. And that podcast put me on a journey and that kind of propelled me to where I am now. And that podcast was Quiero, Dinero.
Wow.
I listened to it from the very beginning all the way through while I was door dashing. And even when I took the side hustle course as cohort 1, I still didn't know. I still didn't know what I was going to be doing, that I wanted to coach people and that I wanted to talk to Gen Xers, that I wanted to talk to caregivers, that I wanted to talk to people about these crazy things that we were facing.
Wow. I have goosebumps because I have literally watched your journey from the beginning and it's really an honor to be a part of that. And that's the whole point of this. It's just providing that space where we can talk about the shit that is going on with our lives financially, navigating these spaces where we don't have the education, we don't have the financial literacy that's been passed on. We're like figuring this shit out as we go. And, I think a lot of folks can resonate with the idea of like finding themselves in a financial hole. And I'm like, well, how the fuck did I get here? So how did you get to the place where you were facing bankruptcy? Like, where was the debt coming from? What were your spending habits? Like, what was going on with your money?
So I was literally living paycheck to paycheck. I had, for about 3 or 4 years, I think, I got spousal maintenance after my divorce. And I actually went to work for my ex-husband. He owned a restaurant. And so I started to manage that. And so I was doing that and I had money. I wasn't paying attention to where my money was going. I wasn't saving anything. I wasn't doing anything with it. But a huge mix up with payroll. I get paid as a caregiver. So with payroll happened when I was out of the country in 2015. And that's what set the snowball of getting behind on my home payments. I had no debt other than the mortgage because my credit was so bad that I was like, I didn't have credit cards. I didn't have any of that. But my spending habits were like, I can't even tell you what I spent my money on, just a bunch of shit that I didn't need. But I also didn't have money to help me catch up when I got behind on my mortgage. It just got so bad that I ended up not having, that happened like around 2015, and it wasn't until 2017. So I held them off for 2 years, but I still had that stress of having to figure out what I was going to do. And I couldn't work with the mortgage servicer. They were asking me for paperwork that I didn't know how to submit to them. I mean, it was just, it was a mess. And so I ended up filing, and for 5 or 6 months, I made payments toward the bankruptcy because you have to make like initial payments. But even though I made the payments on time, in full, whatever, they still were like, she doesn't have enough income, so we're going to dismiss the case. And that's what happened.
So what does it mean when they dismiss your case? Is it just like, well, you're back to square one, you don't have a solution?
That's right. So sometime around 2018, I went to mediation. So most states, if not all, will have some kind of housing commission where people can go and be like, okay, I need some kind of impartial party to work between me and the mortgage servicer. So I went to mediation, and they still were like, you just don't have enough income monthly to make any kind of payment.
Wouldn't it make sense to then dismiss your fucking debt? Like, I don't understand what the logic is there. Like, the whole point of bankruptcy is because you can't pay your fucking debt.
Yeah, I made the payments for like 6 months. And so of course, they gave me the money back. And so here I am hanging on to like $12,000, $13,000 wondering, can I add this to my past due payments? And they wouldn't allow me to do that. So then they kept sending letters and whatever until finally, we were getting to 2018 and then 2019. And in December of 2019, I got a final foreclosure notice that said, we're going to foreclose on February 14th, 2020. So I put my house up on the market like a week before that. My birthday's on the 19th. So I was like, I'm going to have to sell my house or I'm going to lose my house. I'm not going to have a house by the time I turn 50.
And this was like a month before the pandemic too. So imagine, like, holy shit. Wow.
Yeah. And that slowed everything down. So instead of closing and doing whatever the fucking 30 days or 45 days, we didn't move out until April 30th.
Wow. So it was like almost 60 days delay. Holy crap. Okay. I have so many questions. I'm like, first of all, if this is not a prime example of how broken the system is when it comes to like actually giving people solutions to these issues, like the fact that they've realized that you literally can't pay back the money that you owe, but somehow for them it makes sense to not dismiss your debt. So that's insane.
Or tack it on to the end of the mortgage.
Right. Or refinance or something. Like there's so many solutions that clearly just they don't give a shit about really resolving the issue.
I couldn't refinance because I had refinanced about 10 years before, and I had a really low interest rate. I was paying like 2% or something. So they couldn't refinance it. But, there was no workaround. They weren't accepting the paperwork that I was sending from my employer because I didn't really have an employer, because at the time it was the state that would pay me. The state was like a go-between between me and my sister, because my sister technically was my employer. And so the paperwork that they wanted, like proof of income and year to date and all that, it didn't show up on the pay statement because it wasn't a typical pay stub. And I tried to explain that to them. And then when I called and I was like, I need this info. Oh, we don't do that. I'm like, just a letter. I'm like, no, we don't do that. And so then I tried to explain that to mortgage servicer, and it just went, there just was no working around it. The house was worth a lot of money. They wanted the house.
I bet. And this is in Washington State, correct? This is where.
Yes.
Okay.
In Seattle.
All right. So let's dive into the fact that you are like a full-time caregiver too, because I think that's a really interesting dynamic that you have. So you're getting paid to take care of your sister.
Yes. So Medicaid, she's eligible for Medicaid, and Medicaid will pay for a family member or an agency or somebody who's trained to be a caregiver to provide care for somebody with disabilities. So that's in jeopardy too.
Yeah. Well.
But yes, so Medicaid pays between the state of Washington and the federal government. Monies are apportioned to Medicaid, and part of that Medicaid money goes to pay people to provide care for a person who is eligible. So my sister's eligible, so I'm a full-time paid caregiver for my sister who lives with me. But I'm also limited to the number of hours. Oh, I've been doing that since 2002. I think Maria was about 2. So we're looking at 23 years. Paid informally. Before that, it was a long time. I mean, all my life I've been Latina's eldest daughter, we're caring for everybody all the time.
Wow. This is like such a unique situation, which I think a lot of people don't even realize that is like an opportunity for them, because many of us, especially first gen kids, we do face the reality that we are our parents or some other family members' potential like retirement plan. And that also includes care. So how did you find out about these resources? Because I think that's one of the biggest barrier for people, is just not even knowing like what's available to them.
I fell into it was totally by accident. I can't remember why I had reached out to a local disability advocacy organization. I think it was a family that said, oh, if you want to find out about activities that Rebecca can be involved in or whatever, contact da 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 da. And so I did. And then a woman who was a volunteer who had a son who was severely autistic was like, are you getting paid to provide care for your sister? I'm like, well, I'm not really caring for her. And she's like, who takes her to the doctor, who makes appointments, who helps your mother, who does blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, that would be me. And she's like, there is this thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And so she guided me through it. Before I knew it, 2 months later, I was getting paid minimum wage, which at the time, I found out at the time, I looked it up because I was curious. It was like $8 or $9 an hour in Washington at the time. And that was one of the highest. We had the highest, or one of the highest minimum wages in the country. And at the time, it was pretty high. So I was getting paid $8 an hour. And I was like, well, but I felt guilty because I was like, I'm already doing this. So why should I be getting paid? And she's like, you need to get paid for your labor, babe.
I mean, I think it's so normal for us women to like just not even understand the value of that caregiving, and I'm talking to folks who are stay-at-home moms, who are full-time caregivers, and everybody in between. That is back-breaking work, and it is also very emotionally taxing, and it does not come with retirement benefits. So you need to be getting fucking paid,
Yeah. So I'm actually fortunate to be part of a very, very strong union, which came knocking on my door about 2 years after I started caregiving. And 3 years ago, they won a battle just over like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. They won a battle with the state legislature to fund a retirement for us.
So you have what, a 401k?
I have a little one. No.
Oh, so what is it called?
So I don't know if they match, or I don't even know what they do, but you can't add to it. It's like a pension. So I can't add to it, but the state puts money in every paycheck based on how many hours I've worked. We get regular raises. I mean, I make 24 something an hour, so it's not that much for the kind of work that I have to do now, especially since my sister's gotten older and has more issues. I'm not getting paid what I need to be paid.
I mean, I would argue that caregiving is a multiple 6-figure job at the minimum, because you don't turn it off. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a 24-7.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Like, I get paid a maximum of 160 hours. The union doesn't allow us to do like overtime because they know what kind of work it is. My sister's actually eligible for 230 hours a month, but they won't let me work those extra hours. And so I'm limited to the number of hours I can work because of the protection. But I don't clock out at fucking 5 o'clock. There's no such thing.
Yeah, that's the irony of it. It's like the program is helpful for sure, but is it actually grounded in like what the real life experience is and what the level of support is? No, there's still a lot of work to be done there. How do you actually report your hours? Like, do they have some kind of payroll tracking system?
Oh, it's 2 or 3 years ago. The state contracted out with a company that works across the country managing caregivers. So they are technically now my employers, and they pay me. So I just go online and enter my hours and my mileage. I can cash out my, a PTO at any time. But they're the ones who handle anything to do with payroll, medical and dental, vision, all my benefits. That is through the union, mental health care, all kinds of things like that. The union, this union is only in, I think, Washington, Montana, Alaska, and maybe Idaho. So caregivers in other parts of the country don't necessarily have the same union representation that I do. I have a really fucking strong union. So it's like 12.5 million caregivers, or maybe I'm just confusing that with the number of Medicare and Medicaid recipients. I don't know, but there are millions of unpaid caregivers in this
Oh,
country.
absolutely. I know that for sure. That's for sure. So it's really good to know that these programs exist. So I suggest y'all, if you're listening and this situation could potentially apply to you, do your research, contact your state government.
Yeah, the
Because you
local
just never
disabilities
know.
advocacy people. Yeah, and every state government website will have like a section dedicated to people with disabilities. And that's where you start. Because if somebody is receiving Medicaid, then they are eligible to have a caregiver. And if you're already doing it, then just sign up. I really encourage people to do that.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you're leaving money on the table that you are rightfully entitled to. And we don't do that shit here. All right. So you are in the middle of this like financial turmoil. You're selling your house, dealing with foreclosure, and you have the foresight to say, I'm going to open a Roth IRA. What was kind of the overall like intention behind that? Was it just to feel like you were doing something that felt like you were in control of your money in some way?
For about 2 years, I had been saving my weekly paychecks just kind of in my savings account, my credit union savings account. I'd never even heard of a high yield savings account. And I was like, I should probably be doing something more. And something just came over me. And I was like, I felt like it was a responsible thing to do for me. And it was just something that I had to do. I mean, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was looking at the app and I was looking at how much I had in there. It was like $8,000. And I'm like, how the fuck am I going to retire ever if I don't have any money? And then I started thinking, is it too late? And I was like, no, it's not too late, because doing the calculations, if I max out that Roth every year, just the Roth for the next 15 years, I could end up with just over $200,000, right? Which there are a lot of Gen Zers or millennials who have $200,000 in their retirement accounts, and that's going to grow over time. But as somebody who started very, very late, would I rather have $0 in a Roth IRA, or would I rather have $200,000 in a Roth IRA?
You know, I love that mindset because there's so many people that ask me that same fucking question of, is it worth it? You know, if you're a Gen Xer and you feel like you're behind on retirement, there's always this question of like, well, how do I catch up? Or is it too late? Is there no point? And that point that you made is just like, hello, it's either you end up with something or you do nothing and end up with nothing. And why would you do that? You know what I'm saying? It's like you're basically like guaranteeing destitution in
Exactly.
fucking old age, because we can't even assume that Social Security is going to exist in the next 10 years.
No, they are going to run out. I've been looking this up too. They're going to run out in 2032, 2033. And unless Congress acts, there won't be money. So in 10 years, I'll be 65. And if I wanted to wait until 70, the money's just not going to be there unless Congress does something. So what I tell people, what I tell clients is pretend that Social Security is not in the equation, so that if it does end up being a part of your retirement plan, then it's like a happy surprise, but don't count on it. And so I'm counting on my Roth to be my Social Security, basically.
I think that's the way to go. You know, there has to sort of be like this mindset shift that we make where it's like, I am the safety net. I literally cannot rely on anybody else being that. And the thing that's important for folks to know who are 50 and over is that there are things called catch-up contributions. If you find yourself in a situation where you might feel like you need to make more progress, IRA accounts will allow you to invest an additional $1,000 per year if you're 50 and over. And there's also catch-up contributions for 401k participants for 2024 and 2025. That's an additional $7,500 on top of the annual limit. So they are giving you a bigger pot that you can put into. That being said, it can feel like, well, how the fuck am I going to find this extra money when maybe I'm dealing with mortgage, my kids are going to college, maybe my spouse is ill and they can't work as much as they used to. Like there's a lot of shit that happens during this time of life that makes making financial progress arguably a little more difficult. So what do you say to folks who are like in that transition period? They know they need to catch up on retirement. It is closer than it is for millennials, but they feel like, I don't have any fucking money, Deborah. I don't know what to do.
So Gen X is called the sandwich generation. We are sandwiched between our parents and our kids. And a lot of us are funding our parents' retirements or their medications or their food or their housing, and we're paying for our children who are going to college or who are living at home, and we're still paying for a bigger house than, we might otherwise be paying for if the kids were moved out, right? Because a lot of people are returning home. So we've got these two different generations that we are caring for. And so it's like, who's going to care for us? How am I going to do these things? So I look at it as, number one, you don't have to max everything out every year, but slowly increment the amount that you're putting toward your retirement. Because if you think, oh my God, I have to put in $8,000 in my Roth this year, then it's just going to be overwhelming because that's 500 or 600 and something a month. And I have to pay off my debt. I have to pay my mortgage. I have to pay my car. So I discovered something over the years, and that is that when you're asked, oh, how much do you spend each month on gas, groceries, takeout? A lot of people don't really have an idea unless they're actually tracking every single expense. And I came to realize that. So look at where your spending is going and see where you can manipulate some things. I'm not saying cut everything out because that's not reasonable. It's not reasonable to just put yourself on the strictest budget or strictest spending plan because it's just going to blow up in your face. But I think of it as decide how much you want to increase your 401k contribution, at least get the match at the very least. Then after that, open your Roth, put in a little bit each month, and then every 3 months or so, increase the amount that you're contributing to that. Because I feel like doing it in increments is a better way than to do it an all-in-one. And do that over time because that'll also give you less money to fuck around with that you don't know where it's going. Do not ever, ever, ever touch any retirement plan. I don't care if it's a Roth. I don't care if you can withdraw from your Roth after 5 years, you can withdraw your contributions. Do not use any of that money to pay for somebody's education because there's no financial aid for retirement. The financial aid that we were counting on is not going to be there. Social Security is not going to be there. And it's not going to be enough even if it is going to be there. So my thing is do it little by little over time. Even if it's every month or every quarter or twice a year, the best thing to do it to get it into the habit of doing that is to increase how much you're going to contribute. And then ask for a fucking raise. You can only cut so much out of your budget. You could cut out eating out. Maybe you could save $400 a month, but that is going to backfire eventually because you're going to feel deprived. It's not fun. You don't want to be deprived. Ask for a raise. Start a side hustle. I hate to say monetize everything, but, and if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But I think the trick is to have less money to mess around with each month. And that is by paying yourself first. As soon as it hits your account, it needs to go out into your Roth. That's what I do with my Fidelity contributions in my Roth. I get paid every 2 weeks on a Friday, and every Monday, that money is out of there. It's being pulled out. I don't have a chance to, and my savings have just skyrocketed because I've been doing that. It's the automation. It's the automation, setting it up. And and for people like I have ADHD, and I know that it's really hard to take steps. If there are too many steps to do something, I know that it's going to make you not want to do the thing. Because like if you're at work and you have to go to your payroll department, you have to log into payroll or you have to send an email. Then you have to fill out a form to tell them to increase it. And then you have to send that form back. So there are a bunch of steps involved. So take it slow. Set a date or a reminder in your phone or in your planner. On this day, I'm going to send an email. Then when I get the email, I'm going to give myself 3 days to print out the form or to fill it out. Then I'm going to give myself another day to send it off. Break it down into tiny, tiny steps so that you get this thing going. And then every step you take, honor it, celebrate it, honor yourself with that.
We need to summarize this advice because we're dropping fucking gems here. Okay. First of all, I want you to hear the fact that there is no financial aid for retirement. Like this is for my parents of college bound students. Okay. First of all, I need some parents to be realistic about whether or not college is actually for their kids. Because I think there in the past has been this blanket expectation that every kid's supposed to go to college. And what I've seen happen with family members, with friends, some people that's not their environment that they're going to flourish. And they drop out. They've taken out fucking loans on a program and a degree that they're never actually going to get. Maybe you've co-signed on those loans and you're dealing with having to repay shit in your 40s, 50s, 60s and looking at retirement and dealing with Parent Plus loans, all because you just didn't want to confront the fact that maybe college is not for my kid. And that's okay. That is not the only fucking path to success.
It's not. And there are so many things that you can do. Listen, I've got my eldest kid, Maria, is 24 and graduated from the University of Washington with zero debt because their dad and I were just like, you are not taking out loans. Well, I was the one who was like, do not take out loans. Just do your grants. And dad and I gave them money for rent and food and whatever. Maria is now, because of the money lessons they've learned, is paying their way through grad school. They graduate in December. And I'm so proud. I am so proud because they're making so many sacrifices. The next kid, Giancarlo, is 21. He withdrew from his private high school because he's like, I can't do this. I want to go to high school completion program. He's in a high school completion program. And then he's going to go to a technical college to get a certificate in massage therapy, something he has wanted to do for years. I am just as proud of Giancarlo as I am of Maria. Maria's going to have the first master's degree in our family. And Giancarlo's going to have a certificate in massage therapy, something that just lights him up. I am just as proud of him because he recognized, I'm not built for college. I don't want to do this. I want to do this other thing. And he's going to make a really good living with the thing that he wants to do. And so we do have to, and it was from you that I learned, one, don't be ashamed of renting. And two, college isn't for everybody. It's like hearing you say that over and over and over throughout your podcast, your social media, and just in general. It's like, she's got a point. And when I see that my kids are following that thing, like, no, college isn't for me. The last one wants to go to college. Okay. But no, it's not necessary. And I am not going to end up with Parent Plus loans.
I know that's right. We are not doing
I had enough to deal with my own fucking loans and I'm going to have to deal with my kid. No, no. I will sacrifice. I will do whatever to support my kids financially while they're doing this. I don't want no fucking loans.
I love that. I really love that perspective because I think our job as parents is to just create an environment where our children can thrive. And it's not pushing them in a direction because we want them to fulfill whatever fucking dreams we gave up, or we need them to check off whatever artificial bullshit checklist of quote unquote what a successful adult looks like. It's time to bust those narratives. The same thing with renting, like this idea that you're like somehow not an adult if you rent. First of all, I've built so much wealth as a renter. You know, I'm a new homeowner as of recently, but I built multiple 6 figures worth of fucking wealth renting. So let's throw that shit out the door. And I want to dive into that. But also I wanted to recap a couple of the things that you had mentioned, which was automation is the key to actually building wealth on autopilot. The more you can take yourself out of the potential self-sabotaging opportunities, the more you will be successful in pursuing your goals. So I love that as well. And also, there's only so much that you can cut. Life is going to continue to get more expensive. The cost of living is going to continue to rise. That is literally inflation. Inflation is not going to ever go away. And so the only way that we can continue to make financial progress is to up-level your skills so that you do not become obsolete, because that is just the nature of our world. There's always new technology, new skills, new things that are of value, and you have to just stay nimble, stay educated, stay abreast of like what is going on in the world from a career perspective. And diversifying your income is more important than ever, especially knowing things like these safety nets that we thought were going to be there for us are not. Knowing that most employment is at will, knowing that we live in a capitalistic society where at the end of the day, you're just a fucking number. It doesn't matter how many exceed expectations you've gotten on your performance reviews. They don't give a shit. At the end of the day, companies are in business to make money. And if whatever the fuck you're doing, your department's doing, there's going to potentially be an impact. And it doesn't matter how hard you work. And it goes back to this idea, like, I have to be my own safety net. So just literally operating from that place, I think it's going to always have you in that perspective of like, I can't get too comfortable putting all my eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about your decision to sell your home, get out of foreclosure, and go back to renting. Because I think a lot of people would spiral in that situation where they're just like, oh, but I like quote unquote achieved the American dream, and then I fucked it up because now I'm back to renting. How do you get past that mindset and like really understand what the potential benefits are of renting versus owning a home? Because I think one of the things for me is like people don't really understand how fucking expensive it is to own a house.
Oh my God. Yes. So one of the things that brought me comfort, so my family was completely, my mom and my kids were just amazing. They were like, so we rent, who cares? And also my house, it didn't sell for as much as I would have wanted because of all the repairs it needed. It needed electrical, plumbing, new flooring, a new roof. It needed new gutters. It needed new fencing. The basement was unfinished. I mean, it was a disaster. It would have cost me over $200,000 in Seattle because it was a big house to do all those repairs.
Ain't nobody got time.
Or the money. And I made peace with renting when I realized that even though my rent was going to be more than my mortgage payment, I realized that I was never at that moment going to be able to, because I tried to apply for a personal loan, a home equity loan, and because of my credit, I couldn't. They wouldn't let me. And so I made peace with renting by realizing, also my realtor, who was a friend, said, you are putting a roof over your family's head.
Right.
How adult is that?
I love that.
And that was the important thing. I found a home for my 3 kids, me, my mother, my sister, my chickens, my dog, and my cats. The oldest kid is gone. The chickens are gone. My doggy died. We just have the cats. And I've got my 2 kids and my mom and my sister. And that first fall, it was a Sunday night and the furnace wasn't working. And my ex-husband was like, call the landlord. I'm like, I know, but it's Sunday. And he's like, call the landlord. I was like, okay. So I called the landlord. I'm like, Eduardo, this really amazing couple who have not raised our rent in 5 years. And I said, Eduardo, oh my God, I'm sorry to bother you on Sunday, but the furnace, da 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 da. Within an hour, he had sent someone out. They fixed it, and we had our heater going back up. I don't know how much that cost him on a Sunday at 6 o'clock at night.
He definitely paid a premium because I called the plumber on a Sunday here too, and they charge a nice emergency
okay, then.
fee.
Then there was another time when the toilet in the boys' bathroom got clogged. We couldn't do anything, da 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 da. So we had to call a plumber. And something happened in the bathroom over here. Then we had a problem with rats. Every time I called the landlord, he sent someone out to fix whatever was going on. It hasn't been a lot, but all I keep thinking is, the washer and dryer eventually broke down and he replaced those. But every time something has happened in the house that needed fixing or replacing, I haven't had to pay for that, which is nice. Whereas in the other house, the washer broke down, the refrigerator broke down, we needed a new freezer, we needed a new this, new that, and you're paying out of pocket for all of that. And so like you, I've been able to save more in the last 5 years than I've ever saved in my life. Looking at my savings and my investments, I'm just like, in spite of the fact that I'm also paying more in rent than I was ever paying in mortgage. Granted, I'm much more conscious of how I'm using my money and all that, but I still feel like renting gave me like this break. And now I'm afraid to own. I don't want to own again because I'm thinking property taxes and insurance, all these other things. So I don't know what the future holds. I definitely would not get into a 30-year loan because I'd be 85 when the thing was paid up if I'm still alive. But I don't know that I would do that again. I'm like, I kind of like this renting thing. And I fell into it really quickly. As soon as that furnace thing, I was like,
yeah,
I don't want to own anymore.
This is the thing. People, you need to see what the facts are. And the facts are that your rent is going to be the most that you pay in a month. Whereas your mortgage is the least you're going to pay. Okay. You're not factoring in what the maintenance costs are going to be. If there's a hurricane and your fucking house gets blown away and now you got to pay your 3% deductible, which for me is about like $30,000. If my house gets blown away, I have to pay for my insurance to even start covering anything. Okay. So this is the shit we need to actually talk about. Can you actually afford to own a fucking house? Because what typically experts will tell you is you have to add 40% on top of the mortgage payment, which includes your property taxes, your insurance, and your principal to cover all of the other things, the utilities, the upgrades, the maintenance, and all the other unexpected shit. So just because the bank tells you, oh yeah, you qualify for this mortgage, you might not actually be able to afford that fucking house once things start to happen. And I think that's the narrative that needs to be drilled into people's heads, because there's still a lot of this shaming about renting on the internet. There's all this like, oh, well, you're paying somebody else's mortgage and you're building wealth for somebody else. You're doing that if you're not doing anything around investing, saving, being a good steward of your money. Sure, that's a fair argument. But if you're actually taking all the money that you're saving from not having to deal with all the home ownership bullshit and investing that money, honey, you're doing it right.
Yeah. And I do acknowledge that I am fortunate because I have responsible landlords, and they haven't raised my rent in the 5 years that we've lived here.
Which means that you're good tenants and they want to keep you there.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I do understand. I do know that Maria moved out 3 or 4 years ago, and, everywhere they've lived, well, the two places that they've lived, their rent has been raised every year. And so I do understand that that's a thing. And I do know that there are very unscrupulous landlords all over the place. And so I do see why people want to own, and maybe I will own again someday. I just don't know when that time will come.
Well, and I think it's fair to give yourself that possibility to entertain, but also realize this is also a great time for you to maximize what you're doing financially, and not put this pressure on yourself to be living up to some bullshit standard of what society has deemed responsible adulting. Because I would much rather you be renting and be thriving financially than be fucking house poor, but have, you can say, oh, I own a house. Okay, then what?
Yeah. That's what happened to me. Even if my house hadn't been scheduled for foreclosure, I was still house poor because I still had to put an estimated $200,000 into maintaining it and keeping it, for making it habitable for everybody for a long time. And I didn't have that money. And of course, I wasn't in a position to be able to do that. And even if now, if I was living there now with, how my savings have gone over the last 5 years, looking back, I don't know that I would have been able to do that. So everybody has to do what's best for them, but recognize that renting is an adult thing because it's putting a roof over your head.
Absolutely. That's the mic drop moment of the podcast, y'all.
Ay, Dios mío.
All right. So I can imagine, because I'm turning 40 this year and I'm really starting to think about legacy planning, estate planning. What is all this for? What does that look like for you when you think about wealth transfer, estate planning, making sure that maybe the next generation doesn't struggle nearly as much as you? What does that look like from a practical perspective for you?
So there are the practical things, have a power of attorney for healthcare, a power of attorney for finances, a will, a trust. Make sure that even on your bank accounts and your credit union accounts, any retirement accounts, any financial accounts, that your beneficiaries are updated.
Yeah, please don't leave your ex-husband as your beneficiary on your retirement accounts. Okay.
Exactly. I just realized I had my ex-husband as a beneficiary on some accounts where I was like, what? How did I not? That's why I like to consolidate, roll things over into one account so that I don't have a bunch of accounts everywhere, because then I can see everything there. So do, the practical matters of make a list of all your accounts and then little by little go through and update them. And your checking and savings accounts, make sure there are beneficiaries listed for those. And then once you've done all of the legwork, contact an estate planning attorney to see if it would benefit you in your state to set up a trust. And then after doing all that practical thing and getting your attorney, setting up a trust or whatever, see if you still need life insurance. For example, if you have term life insurance and your kids are all in their 25, 30, see if that's something that you still want to be paying for, because term life insurance, usually is just for while your kids are growing up so that it can pay for their upbringing and support financially for whoever's going to be taking care of them. But once your kids are in their 30s and 40s, and if you're paying hundreds of dollars a month in term life insurance, which you probably wouldn't be if it's term and if you got it a long time ago, see if that's something that you still want to have, because maybe you do want to leave $100,000 to each of your kids. But one of the things that I also do is I have a notebook that I have put together for my children, for them to know what to do with my mom and my sister in case I die before my mom and my sister, and also what to do if once my mom and my sister die, if I die after them, these are the things that I want you to do. But the most important thing, like the thing that I always think about when somebody says, how should I prepare? Is I want my children to be prepared. And I think that the best way to prepare people for your death, because everybody's going to die, is to make things as easy as possible for them. And I am speaking from experience. So when my grandmother, my dad's mom, she came from the generation of people who did not talk about money. I suspected growing up that my grandmother had a lot of money. And she had so much money. And she died without a will. All my life, all I ever heard was, I'm not leaving any of my money to anybody who smokes or drinks. I'm not leaving my money to anybody who smokes or drinks. I'm not leaving my money. So that took out my dad and a number of my cousins. And she was saying that without saying their names. And of course, when she died, my dad and his brother and the third brother who died, his daughters were the ones that my grandmother said she was never going to leave anything to, were the ones who inherited her estate because she had no will. And we're talking about $1 million.
Oh my God.
With insurance, house, everything. And it was a disaster. And it was a disaster for my one cousin who was named executor of the estate by the attorney. Do not die without a will, because if you do not have anything in writing, if you don't have your will, if you don't have a trust, if you don't have your beneficiaries updated, the state is going to stop everything when that person dies, and they will decide who gets what. My stepson from my marriage is technically not somebody who could inherit any of my estate. So if I don't include him as a beneficiary and I don't specifically include him in my will, he won't get anything. But he's like my kid. So I have to be sure that I want him to inherit a quarter of my estate when I die. So as Gen Xers, we're getting closer and closer. We have to have all those things in order. Because if we don't, then it's just going to put a burden on our kids.
Absolutely. And we don't want to continue to repeat these cycles of struggle. So if you can be an active participant in breaking that cycle, this message is for you. And I also want to encourage folks who are in this age bracket. If you are someone that has people dependent on your income, whether those are children or family members, please consider looking at long-term disability insurance. Because you're getting older. If there's chronic illness that runs in your family, if you know that there's potential autoimmune diseases, anything that could put you out of commission to earn income, looking at long-term disability insurance in your 50s is going to be way more affordable than waiting until you're in your 60s. At that point, it can potentially be completely unaffordable. And at that point, it could also be too late. You could have already developed those potential health issues that make you ineligible to work. And then you're like relying on our very shitty social system.
Yeah. And with long-term disability, one thing to know about that is depending on your state and depending on the insurance, it doesn't kick in right away. So you have to wait like 1 or 2 years. And like in Washington, and there are a number of states that have enacted this legislation, but in Washington, we pay into a fund, a public fund. And so if I become disabled tomorrow, that fund will kick in and that will cover me at least until my disability insurance kicks in. So find out also in your state if you have something like that, because that's something that's going to be really important. Because if your state doesn't have that, and if your insurance is going to make you wait a year, you need to have something to cover that gap. Who's going to do it?
Yeah, that's a great point to bring that up, especially given the fact that 1 in 4 adults becomes disabled before retirement. So it's like, let's not put ourselves in positions where potentially like now there's this financial chaos that's introduced because you're not aware of like what protections you might need to put in place.
And people don't understand disability is the only identity that can happen at any time in your life. You can be disabled from a stroke. You can be disabled crossing the street and breaking your leg and having osteoporosis, and it's never going to heal. So you're bound to a wheelchair. You just don't know. And that's something that's also coming up a lot with this whole Medicaid and this whole budget vote that happened last week. People don't realize that Medicaid is lifelong. It can be lifelong. And because of disability, you can be temporarily disabled or permanently disabled at any time.
And after it's happened, it's too late to start planning. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah, I know so many people are going to want to find out more about you, your story, how you work with folks, where we can find you. So please let us know all the tea, where we can get more of your wisdom.
So I have a website and I'm on Instagram. Instagram, Be Money Coaching, TikTok, Be Money Coaching, and the website is bemoneycoaching.com.
And how do you work with clients?
I work on a 12-week basis.
And so it's a one-on-one coaching?
One-on-one coaching. It's a 12-week program. I also have a co-working group that I started recently to kind of help people get caught up with their bills and to establish ways to pay off debt and to just kind of figure things out, just kind of like a general co-working group. And anybody who's a member of my newsletter, a subscriber to the newsletter, can get in for free. It's the fourth Monday of every month.
I love it. We're going to make sure to link all of those resources in the episode show notes. Please follow Deborah at Be Money Coaching. That's BEE Money Coaching. Deborah, thank you so much for the work that you do, for speaking to a group of people who literally are being ignored by so many different channels in the personal finance community, and for really like getting vulnerable with your own story and sharing everything that you've been through financially, because I know it helps people feel seen. I know it helps them not feel shame and guilt around struggling financially, because the fact of the matter is none of us learn this shit. And so if you're feeling like you don't know what the fuck's going on with your money, congratulations. That's intentional. That is absolutely intentional. And this is exactly why I do the work that I do, why you do the work that you do. And this is why it's so important for y'all to just continue to find and immerse yourself in spaces that allow you to really understand like what is possible. And the first step is just understanding that where you are today does not have to be where you are tomorrow. And Deborah, I think you're an amazing shining example of just that. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I learned from the best.
Thank you so much.